I'm honored to introduce the speaker for our second panel, The Future of the Global Trading System. I'll briefly introduce each of our panelists, but I invite you to read their bios in the booklet. Our first panelist is Laura Alfaro, the Warren Alpert Professor of Business Administration at Harvard Business School. She is the co-editor of the Journal of International Economics, which is the leading international economics journal in the field of economics, and the World Bank Research Observer, Vice President of the Latin American and Caribbean Economist Association, and co-chair of the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council on the Future of Growth. Laura was also the Minister of Economic Planning and National Development in Costa Rica from 2010 to 2012. Next, we have Bernard Hoekman, Professor and Director of Global Economics at the Robert Schuman Center for Advanced Studies of the European University Institute. He is a CEPR Research Fellow, a Senior Associate of the Economic Research Forum for Arab countries, Turkey and Iran, and a member of the World Economic Forum Global Action Council on Logistics and Supply Chains. Fukunari Kimura has been Senior Professor at Keio University since April of this year. He is also President of JETRO's Institute of Developing Economies and a Senior Research Fellow at the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. His research topics include international production networks, economic integration, the World Trade Organization, and the digital economy in East Asia. We're also joined by Alan Wolff, a distinguished visiting fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics and former Deputy Director General of the World Trade Organization. He is a founder of the Trade for Peace Initiative at the WTO and author of Revitalizing the World Trade Organization. He's had a distinguished career in international trade as the leading legal practitioner and trade negotiator. We have we have a wealth of expertise in global trade and trade policy on this panel, so I'm looking forward to the discussion. So why don't we start without any further ado? Laura, the floor is yours.
First, let me thank the organizers for bringing me back to this lovely country where the food is great, everything always looks so nice, and people are always very happy. So I am from Costa Rica, so apologies, I don't speak Japanese, but I do consider myself a globalization child. I was born in one country, Costa Rica. I went to the US to study. I married a Brazilian that, as you know, Brazil is the country with the most Japanese outside of Japan. So my daughter actually does speak a little bit of Japanese that she picked up in Brazil. And in many ways, I grew up with the optimism of globalization. In my country, I witnessed the potential benefits that come from open trade, open FDI. In the 90s, we saw Intel choosing Costa Rica to set up a plant, choosing to use Costa Rican labor to assemble products to sell to some other countries. So in many ways, I witnessed this optimism that the global trade system could bring growth and also development. And fast forward to now, when we have climate change concerns, security concerns, pandemics, and then there is this reevaluation of the benefits of globalization, which I have to say, they're not making my middle-age crisis any better. And so there is this view now that we should try to trade with friends to try to lower the risks of globalization. So I'm gonna center my remarks on three, if you want, big topics. The first one, a more positive one, that we're not seeing deglobalization yet, but at least from the point of view of the US, is more a reallocation. Here I will also make two smaller points on the role of energy transition and how this may affect what we think is globalization, and one on the enduring role of FDI as a mode of entry. Then if you want a more negative on the backlash, what has created this backlash, and here I'm going to discuss some work that has linked it, at least in the US, to some sense of security, jobs, and China. And I will try to finish with a more positive view on the potential savior, the potential messiah of globalization and the role of trading services. So on a positive note, and again here I am presenting some work that I did with a co-author, David Chor. He's from Singapore, so we joke that we're the small open economy representatives. We presented this work at Jackson Hole, and in this paper, as I said, we make 2 points. The first one is we're not deglobalizing yet from a point of view of the US. You see still growth in trade, and I think we were perhaps early negatively judging the trade system during COVID and blaming it for a lot of supply shocks. But I actually think that the trade system saved us during COVID. There was no way the US would have been able to consume the amount it consumed, given the demand, the demand stimulus, without trade. And in the case of the US, during this time, trade grew even in real terms. But what we are seeing is what we call a reallocation of global supply chains, in particular after the tariffs in 2017. So this graph shows the change in the market share of the imports to the US from 2017 to 2022 and also 23 because the data has just made available. And there was a decline of close to 5 percentage points in the import market share from China from 2017 to 2022. It used to be close to 22%. Now it's close to 17% in 2022. And now it has gone down even more to 15, 13, depends on how you adjust the statistics. Who has gained this market share? The US global value chains are, if anything, more regional than global. The US tends to have a very stable pattern where they import 20% from Europe. I am including the UK there. 40% from Asia and 30% from NAFTA. So it has always been the case that when Asia loses, Asia wins. So in the 90s, when Japan lost some market share, China won some market share, and now China's losing market share, Asia's winning market share. It is Vietnam. It is high-income Asia, Korea, Taiwan, Singapore. It is middle-income Asia, India, Thailand. But also a point we stressed in this paper is that NAFTA is winning. So Canada reversed the trend. Canada was losing some market share, it has regained, but the absolute winner has been Mexico, which is particularly interesting because Mexico already had a very high integration to the US, and from up to 22, it gained market share, but now it has become actually the main trade partner of the US. So again, from the point of view of the US, it is more reallocation than deglobalization. The other point we make in this paper is we summarize the US trade, exports and imports by a measure that was created by my co-author, David, called upstreamness. So we summarize the upstreamness of US exports and imports. So a good is very upstream, a good is very downstream if it's very close to the final consumer. So think toys, clothing, they're very downstream. They immediately go to the final consumer. A product is very upstream when it takes several stages to reach the final consumer. So think semiconductors, think chemicals. So the US in general has very upstream exports and relatively downstream imports. But notice that around the 2010s, US import downstreamness went down even more. That is the energy transition in the US. This is the time where the US, due to the shale gas revolution, and also because US consumers have become more efficient, stopped being an energy importer, and now the US is on net an energy exporter, and that looks as the upstreamness of imports went down a lot. And the reason we want to stress this is because that may look like deglobalization in the sense that the US is not going to the international markets to buy oil, it's doing it within. But energy transition is likely to create that because a lot of the climate change energies as of right now tend to be very non-tradable, and so they may look like deglobalization, but that is not deglobalization the way we think about it. And so we stress this point, and then also notice that at the end, 2020, 21, 22, US import upstream went up a little bit, which is also part of this reallocation. Some of these very downstream value added is now being done in the US as opposed to being imported. So the other point I want to make here is that we also need to be wary, to be careful when we just look at imports and think, oh, there's deglobalization, because there's many ways in which, or there are two ways in which a firm can cater a market. It can do it through imports. It can also do it through FDI. And FDI has always been the way in which firms have been able to circumvent protectionism, but also raising costs. Indeed, that was the way Japan did it back in the 70s. And in fact, I have a trivia question for this paper. We collected a lot of data on when Japanese firms started and opened up plants. What was the first manufacturing Japanese plant in the US? I'll give you also a hint. It was in California, 1971. Anyone? Honda. Nope. Manufacturing plant. But Honda was the first auto plant. But in general, the first manufacturing plant? Bueller? Anyone? Sony Triniton TV, 1971. And when I usually tell this trivia to my students, they don't even know what a Sony Triniton TV is, but I know what a Sony Triniton TV is. And so, as you know, in the 70s, that's what Japanese companies did to circumvent also a lot of the stories we're hearing now. There were concerns about antitrust, there were concerns about security, there were also concerns that the best Japanese cars that actually dealt with climate change were better than the US, and there were restrictions. And so this is what Japan did, open up plants in the US. And there is this very interesting result that when you add what Japanese firms sell through imports and what Japanese firms sell through direct production, it turns out that it is more likely that a US customer buys a Japanese produce or own product than a Chinese one, and that is the blue line. So that is the way in which the rich countries have remained engaged in the US. So again, one needs to be careful when looking at trends of globalization or deglobalization and just focusing on imports. FDI is another way in which firms can deal with rising costs or also protectionism. And I will argue that FDI will remain a way of engagement because in many ways it's narrative compatible in this world where countries apparently are rediscovering industrial policy. There has always been this, if you want, industrial policy for FDI. Firms, even in the US, have always received incentives to go abroad, to come to the US, to locate in different cities, because of potential externalities, benefits, spillovers, jobs, capital. And this is compatible with the US rediscovering industrial policy, although, as I said, they have always used it, in particular, for FDI. However, we also need to be careful because it's going to be harder to measure the extent of FDI for many reasons. One is that there is the complexity of modern economic activity. It is just very complex now to measure value added. It used to be simpler when it was just manufacturing. Now we have services, now we have intellectual property, and this will just make it a little bit more complex to measure it. There is also the more complex ownership structures that we see today that are going to make it hard to measure. There is the complexity of globalization. Value is being created in many places, and one little piece is added in a country, another piece in the different one, so on and so forth. There is also that there's sovereign, quasi-sovereign entities, and all of these make it hard to measure. There is also new technological change, and also in finance, for example, Bitcoin, that might be financing many activities. And all of that will make it hard to know how much is FDI. Add to that we keep measuring in different ways. We change the measure, but also we tend to use greenfield investments. And a lot of greenfield investments tend to be announcements, and we don't go and revise back whether the firm was done at which amount. But as I said, FDI will continue to be a form of engagement. It will be a little bit more difficult to measure it. And as I said, geopolitically, it may be hard for China to emulate the way Japan entered in the US in scope and speed, but FDI will also be a way in which China goes around some of the restrictions. Indeed, it has already been a way where they're doing this. Vietnam, for example, is a country that has always had FDI engagement by China, but Mexico, which used to be a country with very little China FDI, and it was apparently a strategy of China not to enter into Mexico because it was seen as a competitor. If you go now and look at the data, Mexico actually has very good data. You go look at sectors and ownership. There are two sectors that are growing very fast in China: auto and auto parts. In fact, it's 75% of all new FDI in auto and auto parts in Mexico are China. Again, it's still the base is very low. Mexico FDI is dominated by the US, but it is a way to go around some protectionist tendencies. And so it is likely that the US won't be able to disengage 100% from China. That was also never the objective. It is very hard. China is big, but it's likely that we'll remain engaged directly or indirectly, either through FDI or because partners are increasing the role of imports from China. And indeed, out of the top 5 US importer trading partners, all of them have increased imports from China except Japan. And so, again, it is likely to be circumvented. The negative, why the backlash? We have been documented with David and Maggie the role of the views on trade in the US with some representative surveys since 2018. You ask in the US, now people more likely will tell you that they're against trade more than in favor, so close to 60% are against trade. We tried through randomized surveys to explain to them that trade has meant gaining jobs in the service, that trade has led to lower prices, that tariffs lead to higher prices, and we always get people to be against trade. And there was a moment, and this is why we have conducted the survey every year, because we thought there was a mistake. Eventually, we're like, no, this is what people think. And we asked them, why, if I tell you trade is good, you're against trade? And the answer has been that they cannot disassociate trade from jobs and China. So this has become a real concern in the US, and we argue that unless policymakers can disentangle these effects, it will be very hard to see changes in the US. If you look at the campaign now in the US, it just doesn't seem to be that, independently of the 80-year-old man that is in charge of the US, that they're going to change the policy. If anything, they're likely to double down on tariffs. And so this has meant the rise in tariffs and also more industrial policy. And I think what is a little bit more troubling is that this meant that the multilateral system has lost the anchor, which used to be the US. And this might have implications. And so to finish, because I know I'm very much over time, what is going to be our savior? The US has had a trade surplus in services since the beginning of mankind, if you want. Services account for more than 90% of US jobs. I have always found interesting that manufacturing gets a lot of attention when it's less than 10% of jobs. Can services save the US? It is likely in the sense that trading services has been driven by multinationals. And as I said, I do think multinational and FDI has a narrative that it will endure this backlash. However, there are two concerns. One is working from home. that is likely to diminish the interest in cities and so on and so forth. And as opposed to the panel in the morning, I am more negative on AI, because this is coming in the background of a lot of loss of learning in the US. COVID meant that the US kids not only didn't get math and English, they actually forgot the math. And as of right now, there is very little that is being done to undo that. If you pick up a US newspaper, you will never read anything about the loss of math during COVID. And so we're exposing kids on AI when they don't know math. And so we're going to create a generation of kids that will never be able to stare at a white page, because AI will always give them the answer. And actually, I think for the process of learning, that is a big problem. And in many ways, I think the policymakers are trying to solve the problems of the last battle and not worrying about the next one. Sorry for going overboard.
That was great, Laura. So we have Bernard up next.
Okay, well, it's a great pleasure for me to be here. I'm very happy there's so many of you left in the room. I would have thought, that the day is winding on, and it's quite a packed agenda. So I guess what I'm going to speak to you is very much complementary to what Laura was just talking about. I'm going to talk a lot about the policy dynamics and what we can collectively do to try and manage the adverse trends in policy. So you all know the background in terms of the geopolitics, in terms of what's been happening in the world of trade policy. And I think that the things that I would just like to stress very quickly is we've seen a great expansion in what governments are trying to do with trade, right? And trying to leverage trade to achieve a large number of objectives. Some of these are economic objectives. They've been around forever. But increasingly, there are non-economic objectives where trade is being used as either a carrot or a stick. So we're seeing a lot of conditionality being imposed in terms of, I will only let a firm import into my market if that firm satisfies labor standards, environmental standards, and of course what we're seeing now much more, thanks to the geopolitical tensions between the US and China, we're seeing a lot more focus on the national security, economic security types of dimensions. I think the key thing in terms of the data I'm going to very quickly run you through is that all of the action is unilateral. Right, so governments are deciding unilaterally to do something. We're seeing less and less of the type of behavior that we saw in the 1980s, 1990s, where governments are trying to agree in a multilateral context, what are the rules of the road that should apply to the trade policies that we have always been using, but where we're trying to put some disciplines on that use. So we're seeing a real shift away from multilateral cooperation, although I'll come back and say, don't get too depressed yet. There's certainly still life left, I would argue, in the WTO. But we're seeing a big shift into the direction of preferential trade agreements and towards what I call plurilateral agreements, which are different from trade agreements in that they're focusing on particular issues that are creating negative spillovers for the countries that are cooperating. So just very quickly run you through the numbers. If you look at trade distorting, trade restricting measures, you see there's a big spike starting in 2017. So in the last 5-6 years or so, we've seen a big increase in the use of trade policy instruments, broadly defined to include subsidies. And what you'll see, the top bar is green, and the green is services. The red bits are foreign direct investment, right? So one of the big changes we're seeing recently is that there's much more of a focus on services and on FDI than there used to be in the past in terms of restrictive measures. And that's partly explained by these geopolitical tensions, but it's also partly explained by values, right? So a lot of the services stuff relates to data regulation, regulating cross-border data flows, which of course is something that has really accelerated in recent years. The chart here on the right breaks it down by OECD countries versus non-OECD, so developing countries. And here you can see that most of the action comes from the OECD, right? So it's the traditional drivers of multilateral cooperation, the ones who formed the GATT, the ones who wanted to have the WTO. Those are the countries that are doing most of the running in this environment today. If you look at it across sectors, it's a mix of sectors, but if you ask yourself which are the sectors where you would expect to see more intervention now, especially of an industrial policy nature, which relates to greening the economy, the energy transition, national security, economic security. You see, all of those are playing a role in terms of what the policies are trying to do. If you look at the right-hand side here, which just looks at 2023, you do a text analysis type exercise. All this data, by the way, comes from the Global Trade Alert, which is an independent exercise that monitors trade policy. You'll find that a large part of what we're seeing is kind of what I would call old-fashioned industrial policy, which is coming back. But a large part of it also has to do with greening the economy. So there you could argue, well, that's not all necessarily bad. And a relatively small portion has to do with national security, with geopolitical tension. So those are the top two blue parts of the graph. But the fact remains that a lot of what is happening today is increasingly driven by, as I mentioned, these non-economic types of objectives. So if you look at notifications to the WTO, which are kind of historically relatively inaccurate in the sense that not all governments notify what they should do. But one of the interesting things, if you look at the data, is that there's been quite an increase in motivations that fall under essential security interests, right? And there's an article in the WTO which allows countries as an exception to take action to defend their essential interests, which kind of also fall under the heading of national security. And you're seeing more and more of that actually being notified to the WTO. If you look at a text search on this Global Trade Alert database, so this is all measures that are captured by this group of independent analysts that are scouring, web scraping, finding out what governments are doing, you find that in that area of non-economic objectives, if you search for the word dual, which is essentially dual-use technologies, if you search for the word security, that's where a lot of the action is in terms of kind of at the margin what is happening with respect to what governments are trying to do with respect to trade policy. Last factoid here, which I think is important to think about, what is the potential for putting kind of guardrails around this? What is the potential for negotiating disciplines and pursuing cooperation? If you look at the OECD countries, most of the action is money, right? It's subsidies of different types. If you look at what developing countries are doing, most of the action is more traditional trade policy, right? So it's tariffs, it's local content restrictions. And the explanation for that is not hard to find. Clearly, there are much more tighter budget constraints in developing countries than there are in the OECD, but I think that's kind of something to keep in the back of your mind as we start thinking about where might there be scope for cooperation to address the spillovers that are created by these policies. So here the stylized fact is, I think, that it's become much more difficult for the WTO to deal with this agenda because we're talking, or we have, at least until the recent past, been talking much more about domestic regulation and the effects that domestic regulations have on trade than we have been about traditional market access type of restrictions. Now, after President Trump, clearly tariffs came back with a vengeance, and we're seeing more use of traditional trade policy instruments than we did a while ago. And the WTO is kind of conceived to deal with that type of an agenda, where it's much less designed and fit for purpose is to deal with the spillovers that are created by governments taking actions on the trade front because they're trying to achieve either non-economic objectives, and in particular, I would argue, where they're trying to achieve non-economic objectives. Now, trying to get countries to agree on what the rules should be for the use of these types of policies with a view to reducing the negative spillovers is very difficult, much more difficult today than it was when the GATT was formed in the late 1940s, because we have pretty much everybody is a member of the WTO. So we don't have what we had in the 1940s, 50s, where we had a group of essentially like-minded countries that agreed on what the rules should be and that were then enforcing them. And you see that reflected in the Doha Development Agenda negotiations, which ran into the sand in 2008. And since then, there's really been a deadlock in the ability of the WTO membership to actually agree with each other on what the rules should be. The reaction to that has been, okay, if we can't do it in Geneva, we're going to do it with our friends, right? And that's reflected in preferential trade agreements. Of course, that's a big thing here in the Asia-Pacific region with the CPTPP, with RCEP, but that's been a general trend. So countries that want to go further do it through preferential trade agreements. And I think here it's important to bear in mind that there are many of those agreements. Many of those agreements have been getting deeper over time. So that signals there's still a strong interest on the part of governments to actually engage in a process of agreeing on what the rules should be on trade-related policy instruments. So I think that's one potential plus point. But the problem here, of course, is that China and big emerging markets are not inclined or much less inclined to engage in deep integration type agreements than OECD countries have had. So the other dimension here in terms of the reaction to not being able to do business on a multilateral basis is that governments have been pursuing plurilateral agreements. And these are essentially not so much trade agreements, they're certainly not traditional trade agreements, but they're domain-specific, issue-specific agreements among like-minded countries where they're trying to agree on what is actually good practice in a particular area. So, a few slides in my remaining 5 minutes in terms of what could be done to deal with all of these different types of instruments that are being used and to internalize the spillovers that are associated with them. So the first takeaway here is that we need to be focusing not just on the traditional trade policy, industrial policy type of instruments where it's all about, I want to help my guys, so it's all about discriminatory types of measures, but it's increasingly also about how do we go about pursuing these non-economic objectives that many countries have now? Greening, labor, how do you manage data flows, data privacy, data protection? These are issues that most countries have to struggle with. And those are all issues that I think there is great scope for cooperation for. One big area, I think, where we need to have a discussion in terms of what the rules might be and to put some guardrails around what governments do is in the area of national security, essential security. And what I would argue, and I've written a book with Doug Nelson and Petros Mavroidis, which you can get from the CEPR website last year. So one of the things we argue that to deal with all of these issues, what you need is you need to start by actually understanding what the other guy is trying to do, right? So you need a process of deliberation where we can collectively identify what the objectives are that governments are pursuing, and where we have a process where you think through what are the appropriate instruments to pursue these objectives? What are the spillovers associated with those appropriate instruments? And how can you deal with those spillover types of issues? And we don't have time to go into that. Maybe we can get into that into the question and answer period, at least for some of these things. But it means revisiting a lot of the rules that are in the WTO today, because the WTO doesn't really care about the environment. So in a sense, if you as a government want to take measures to protect the environment, you do that as an exception, insofar as you have to use a trade policy instrument that otherwise would be disciplined. So we need a lot more informed deliberation, peer review, dialogue to actually deal with these types of issues. And that's a big weakness of the WTO. Because the WTO is designed as a negotiating forum, and once you've negotiated something, then there's enforcement mechanisms, which is a mix of surveillance and dispute settlement, but it's not really geared up to actually think through what are we collectively trying to do, where do we agree to disagree, and how can the countries that agree move forward in putting together rules that could actually reduce these negative spillovers. So that then points in the direction of trying to identify areas where there is scope for multilateral agreement. And I think, so for example, there was recently an agreement on fishery subsidies negotiated that applies to all WTO members. So it's one of the recent success stories of multilateral negotiations. But I think increasingly as we confront these non-economic objectives, we have to recognize that there's going to be issues where some countries simply don't agree. So therefore, you need to move forward, I would argue, that the like-minded can move forward. And I think that's the big challenge for the WTO. How do you incorporate agreements which only apply to a subset of WTO members into the WTO machinery, right? And I think Alan can say a lot more about that, but I would argue that one of the things that needs to be done there to facilitate that process is to agree on what plurilateral agreements should entail. Right, so I would argue they need to be open. There needs to be a mechanism that you actually deal with the concerns of developing countries to help with technical assistance. There needs to be a whole set of things that in practice actually are incorporated in some of the recent plurilateral agreements that have been negotiated in the WTO. So this is a track that has already been pursued successfully. But there's, I think, a good case to be made for formalizing that to deal with the concerns, at least the legitimate concerns of some countries who say, well, really, we shouldn't be going down this path. We should be going purely multilaterally. So a final slide on how you manage that in the WTO context. And I think here it's important to kind of broaden out the way countries think about implementation and enforcement of agreements. Because the more there is a focus on these non-economic types of objectives, the less likely it is that the traditional instrument in the WTO for enforcement is going to be effective. And I think national security is the primary example for that. If two countries invoke, or if one country invokes national security for certain measures, it's very unlikely that that country is going to accept to go to a panel and where 3 judges are then going to tell that country what you've done is not legit, and therefore you need to remove those. In practice, that's kind of whistling against the wind. So there are mechanisms there that can actually be used, are being used in other areas, for example, in product standards, which are called specific trade concerns. And it goes back to this notion of using the WTO more as an instrument for discussion, deliberation. Specific trade concerns allows a country to say, and to ask, why are you doing this? What's the justification for this? And what are the implications of what you're doing, both for yourself, is it effective, and for us in terms of these spillovers. So I think we can come back to that in the Q&A session. I'm over time, so thank you.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank David, and also organizers for adding me to this great panel. It's a great honor. Thank you very much. My talk is about the current situation in this region, Japan and East Asia. Here, East Asia includes Northeast and Southeast Asia, other than China, actually. So those third countries are in a really particular situation under geopolitical tension. So what would be a sort of response of private sector and what governments in this region can do in economic diplomacy. Those are what I like to talk about here. So we have various kinds of policy modes in geopolitical tensions, particularly in the context of the US and China confrontation. One was the tariff war that may come again after the presidential election. But in case of tariff war, once tariffs are imposed, then actually effects are relatively simplistic, relatively clear-cut, so the private sector can respond. This is like country A and country B having negative free trade agreement. Then both are really reducing trade, bilateral trade, and also usually economic effects are negative for country A and B, but the third countries, country C, may have slight positive effects coming from a sort of tariff war. So if you look at Mexico, Vietnam, and others, they would increase a sort of trade with both China and the US. and also the foreign direct investment is right now coming into Southeast Asia too, so particularly from China and also US. So that's a sort of negative FTA. Private sector can calculate what to do in this case. But in case of export control, particularly in the high-tech sector, this is a little bit more complicated. Recently I wrote a series of short papers trying to measure the trade effects of export control imposed by the US and also recently by Japan too. The result is actually the effects are there sometimes in the most detailed level of trade classification. So that's a 6-digit level or sometimes 10-digit level. Actually, the strict trade export control is actually imposed in just a part of that really detailed trade commodity classification. And then the rest is a sort of neighboring good products. The imports, I'm talking about trade, particularly imports of China in this context. So it's not necessarily a sort of negative for the whole that classification. The rest, so really strictly regulated portion plus neighboring products. The neighboring products imports could be increasing, could be decreasing actually. So my point is that the direct trade effects of export control may not be very, very huge. A little bit different from a sort of impression coming from a sort of journalistic literature. But recently we observe that particularly starting from last year, inward foreign direct investment coming into China seems to decrease pretty significantly. So the trade is not really responded yet, but so say the shock seems to come from foreign direct investment earlier somehow. So if you think of why that would happen, then actually private sector suffers from a sort of unclear regulations on one side. Say export control may not be so clear cut on the US side from the viewpoint of, for example, Japanese companies, particularly small ones. And also policy environment in China is really uncertain for so many private sector people. So recently, many economists, many political scientists in Japan cannot really go to China in a sort of calm mind. So they may be arrested anytime, particularly people who are writing papers on China, actually. If they are not related, no problem. But so both sides, in a sort of in a contemporary sense, we have some uncertainty. And also talking about the future, say various kinds of trade with export control and also other types of trade and investment control may come between US and China. And in that alignment, particularly Japan as a US ally, we may have a part of it over there. So that kind of uncertainty in a static sense and also dynamic sense would really reduce a sort of fresh money, fresh investment going into a sort of China. So we may be observing that kind of things starting from last year. So I think the natural security logic should be somehow clear-cut, but from the viewpoint trade economists, but it will be very difficult. So everything is in the logic of national security. It was really justified. All sorts of industrial policy and others sometimes in the context of national security. So preferably we like to define national security exceptions, at least in the context of trade norms, but that will be very difficult probably. So really we like to see a sort of a clear fence between the regulated portion of the economy and the rest of the economy. And the rest of the economy should be under the rule-based trading regime. But that kind of things may not come very soon. It's very difficult to do that. So that's what private sector and also people in this region are feeling in this issue. So we have some regulated economy, but if you go to Southeast Asia, for example, they're really doing sort of usual businesses, basically. Then worry is a possible weakening of the rule-based trading regime. In this region, we are doing production networks and really detailed fragmentation of production. And so really sort of supply chain is really complicated and sophisticated. So the rule-based trading regime is very, very important. But as you know that some recently introduced industrial policies, particularly in major developed countries, may be inconsistent with their WTO commitments or at least a sort of conventional trade norms. So those kind of moves are sort of weakening the rule-based trading regime in the world. So some major countries in global south have started introducing policies that may violate trade norms. I'm particularly talking about India and also some policies in Indonesia, for example. So I think one big issue is WTO appellate body is stopped right now. So that would really loosen a sort of policy discipline in trade policy in some countries. So I believe that it's very important. So developed countries are not really 100% consistent with sort of trade norms. Still, the rest of the economy should be under the rule-based trading regime. How we can do that? That's what we really have to think of. So one thing is to support the WTO. In some journalistic literature, particularly in Washington, D.C. and others, so sometimes not many people are talking about the WTO anymore, but still WTO has some respect. At least they are watching a sort of rules. Then if they violate that evidently, then they really think of a sort of consistency. So I think still it's very important to work together to revive the WTO. So in the case of ASEAN member states, for example, they really used to take advantage of the rule-based trading regime, even if they did not really contribute to that kind of the regime directly. But so a sort of a free riding was there in the past, but I think they have to change the attitude, and so we really have to defend on WTO together. And also, last year, Japan joined MPIA, a multi-party interim appeal arbitration arrangement that was set up by EU. This is a sort of temporary substitute of appellate body in WTO. I think that is much better than nothing. So in this region, members are Japan, China, Hong Kong. I forgot actually. Macau too, actually. So Macau, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand. So Korea and India and ASEAN member states other than Singapore are not a member. But if both are members of MPIA, then we can solve many things directly. So I think we can promote this kind of movement if WTO appellate body is not really coming back very soon. And also cooperation in joint statement initiatives, so Bernard already talked about. I think this is another channel to enforce the functioning of WTO. And also in this region, we have various kinds of regional initiatives. Still, this is very important too. So one is a link with ASEAN can be further strengthened. So the neighboring countries are having FTAs and other trade arrangements with ASEAN. And also RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, that includes China. So we are, one thing is a sort of quality of the agreement is one issue, of course, but at least really working on RCEP is a sort of supporting of the rule-based trading regime. And also we have sort of ministerial meeting and others that can be utilized to reduce policy risks in this region to some extent. So I think those are important too. And also some interesting movement is Indonesia. Indonesia is really doing a little bit suspicious policies, but at the same time, some part of government officials in Indonesia is really supporting various kinds of rule-based trading regime. So now they like to come into OECD. They have a sort of aspiration to become a developed country, actually, at least by 2045. So the official negotiations started last February, and also one minister declared that Indonesia has an intention to come into CPTPP too. So whether or not this is sort of immediately possible or not, this is one argument, of course, but still some respect to the rule-based trading regime exists in this region. So I think those movements should be really respected. So from the viewpoint of Indonesia, particularly starting from last year, many foreign direct investment is coming from various countries, including China. So particularly the feeling is that the weight of China is really increasing. In order to keep some neutral stance, they like to have some sort of good balance between East and West. So this is another feeling that they have. So we have to take advantage of that kind of things. So 2 points I like to make in this talk. One is that the geopolitical tensions will continue in coming years, unfortunately, probably. But to minimize unnecessary shrinkage of economic activities, a sort of chilling effect should be avoided. In order to do that, the fence between the regulated economy due to national security issues and the rest of the economy must be clear-cut as far as possible in a sort of static sense and also dynamic sense. And also regional initiatives and other moves for the rule-based trading regime should be further promoted. Those are what I wanted to talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back with the Columbia Business School at this forum. I was here a few years ago with Hugh Patrick, and it's a great honor and pleasure to be with this panel. And there's no disagreement. I have no disagreement with anything that has been said so far, and I hope I add something to it. I'm going from here to Geneva, so I express optimism here. And if a week from now, if I have no more optimism, I'm sort of sorry about that. I will have talked to the ambassadors in Geneva to see what they can accomplish. The overview, we have a system that is changed dramatically since 2016. Now, what's changed? I mean, normally for a panel talking about the world economy, you'd say, well, global financial crisis, 2008 or so, and that marked a great change. Actually, from my perspective, looking at the political economy of cooperation in the world trading system, it's 2016 versus 2017. What's the difference? Well, we had an election in the United States. You may have noticed that Mr. Trump, who doesn't seem to have disappeared, was elected, and Mr. Biden followed on with trade policies that are not entirely different, but I think they're distinguishable. Essential security interests dominate U.S. policy. It's a self-centered policy in the United States, largely shaped by challenges posed by China, but also by the world we find ourselves in, and that does stem back to the financial crisis and income inequality, and a number of other issues. Japan's interests, I would say, Japan's policies need to be adjusted, and they are being adjusted as a result of the change in the United States because of the strong alliance. Japan has done a number of very positive things. It saved TPP to make it CPTPP. It champions e-commerce at the Prime Minister Abe in particular, in the world at large and at the WTO. It straddles the divide. It's a very difficult position to be in, as much as some other countries do, but even more so. It's in RCEP, has a trilateral investment agreement with Korea, Japan, and China. It has a joint agreement with the U.S. Japan in 2020, and it is a participant in sanctions and export controls that the United States leads in with respect to the division with China. So Japan's a very important actor in the world stage, and it's a difficult position to be in, but it's being handled with aplomb. The global trade order is under stress. The U.S. has signed out. It's not doing what it used to do. It's not leading the world. It is on the foreign policy side. It is very strong in that area. It's not on the foreign economic policy side. China has not yet signed in. It's not leading. The gap remains unified, unfilled by collective leadership from mid-level countries. They haven't stepped up sufficiently, especially the EU. Japan, therefore, has an important role to play. Essential security interests hamper our cooperation among the big three, US, EU, and China, and as well as blocking deeper U.S. economic integration with its allies. The WTO is in trouble. It's in crisis. Members remain unable to deliberate and reach agreements. Bernard and Laura, Professor Kimura talked about this. We're not doing what we should be doing at the WTO. WTO rules are no longer fully enforceable. While dispute settlement does continue, actually it is functioning, but it's not functioning the way it was designed to function. There is no executive. If you look at any country, any organization, even a social club, it has an executive. There is no executive. It wasn't provided for, really, at the WTO. There's no management function. There is at the World Bank. There is at the IMF. The regional development banks, they all have a form of governance. There is no form of governance of that sort at the WTO. So stark change in the world order since 2016 to the present. In 2016, I won't dwell on this, short time we have, but the WTO was sort of functioning. It wasn't spectacular. It was a trade facilitation agreement. There was the ITA, which was a very good thing. The Information Technology Agreement expanded in 2015. It was supposed to be updated in 2018 and hasn't been mentioned. That doesn't happen. A ban on agricultural export subsidies was agreed. So there was some progress, but the WTO is not, wasn't as opposed to the GATT era. I mean, we had the Uruguay round, which actually gave us the WTO. And it gave us a service agreement. It gave us an intellectual property agreement. It gave us an agriculture agreement. Nothing like that in the last 30 years. Regionally, there was progress being made. The CPTP, well, TPP at the time, signed, ratified by the United States. And Mr. Trump said he would come out of it immediately, get the U.S. out of it, and did. The EU was working on a comprehensive investment agreement with China. China was negotiating its RCEP at the time. So that was the world in 2016. Geopolitically, we were at peace in terms of not every country was at peace, but the major powers were at peace. Crimea was a going back, fading in time. Europe was heavily reliant on Russian energy. China had not yet been named a strategic competitor, so the U.S. and China were not at odds in quite the same way. The Paris Agreement had been signed. Where are we now? U.S.-China rivalry, which could end up in armed conflict any day on the East China Sea and the South China Sea, around Taiwan, Russian cutoff of gas exports to the EU, a world divided into three camps, those who would like to be uninvolved and those who favor Ukraine, those who favor Russia. And we have a series of concerns of a risk expansion of war in the Middle East, in the Baltics, in China, around China. And so what the U.S. response is national security concerns and sanctions. So the U.S. its policy is largely defined by reaction to domestic inequality of income, a reaction to globalization, a wish to reduce the role of multinational corporations, reacting to Russian aggression, reacting to China's economic statism, its expanding influence, and threat of potential conflict. So we have industrial subsidies, we have high tariffs, we have export controls. We're not thinking in terms as we would have in 1947 or 1990 in how to structure an open world economy. Nearshoring is still largely seen in the U.S. as the same as offshoring. So we're not really relying on our allies all that much. I hope that changes in May. U.S. policy is unlikely to return quickly to what it was. It will continue to be self-centered, and the U.S. is no longer a guarantor of a multilateral trading system. It's odd for an American to be standing here and saying all these things, but nevertheless, I think it's accurate. Onshoring has been made operational by Trump, first with so-called national security restrictions on steel and aluminum, blanket tariffs on products from China. Not that much change from Biden, but I did a piece last week on they're different. The tariffs are different. The EV tariffs, of course, apply to almost nothing because we don't import EVs from China yet. Tariffs, the 50%, that's 100% tariff. The 50% tariffs on semiconductors, we have very little trade in semiconductors with China, $1 billion in a year, whereas we import $6 billion a month from the world. Current EU policy I won't spend time on other than they put a lot of defensive measures on the books, but they have not used them extensively yet. Current Chinese policies, self-sufficiency is a major policy, no retreat from state intervention. So for Japan, increasingly difficult to straddle the two adversaries and move forward. But there's an opportunity to do a lot more with the U.S., build on mutual economic interests, foster deeper integration through investment and trade, find mutually beneficial science and technology products, make IPEF into something. IPEF has no binding nature to it. Support joint industrial efforts, take advantage of complementary demographics. There's a lot to be done between the U.S. and Japan that is possible, even under current circumstances, or especially because of current circumstances. On the world stage, there are things to be leading on: food security, climate adaptation, pandemic preparedness, which has sort of been pushed off to the side, dealing with economic insecurity, economic development for the developing countries, WTO reforms, And there are others to work with. There are allied interests out there. EU has to step up. It hasn't. Its heart is in the right place. Its head's often in the right place. Its muscle is not in the right place. It has to be far more, as do the other forward-leading countries that I've listed here, have to be far more active. The state of world trade, actually world trade is doing very well, as has been mentioned, although, as other speakers have talked about, there's been reallocation. The risk is, as we keep adding trade restrictions, do we manage to slow global growth? So is there a high road to global cooperation? I think so. You wouldn't think it right now. We don't talk to we in America don't talk with the Chinese about cooperation very much. But food insecurity, the Chinese are concerned. The U.S. was a major agricultural exporter. Still is a major exporter of agricultural goods. We have a common interest. We no longer have a surplus. Climate change, we have common interests. Future pandemics, we have some common interests. Economic insecurity, China has some interest, as do we, in diversification of supplies and global value chains. Need for economic development, we both see that. So there's a lot of room for common interests. And the question is, what can we do about it? There is essential trade that can provide a basis for cooperation. We need to have trade bring food from places of plenty, places of production, to places of consumption that need food. We need to be able to provide environmental goods and services. We need to have, you cannot have 100% domestic sourcing of products to deal with the pandemic. We learned that in the pandemic. So could we work together, not just with China, but with other countries, to assure personal protective equipment, medicines, vaccines can be shared? Yes. You cannot have 100% onshoring. Diversification is the only means to provide basic, broad, essential security. And there's room for U.S.-China cooperation. Can we compartmentalize? The U.S. and the Soviet Union during the Cold War were able to get some things done. We're able to reduce the nuclear arsenals, for example, even though they were certainly had no great trust in each other. I'm wrapping up now, since a zero is facing me, which I interpret to mean just stop talking. I'm sort of sensitive to that kind of thing. The world trading system needs repair, as been discussed by the other panelists. Namely, we have to be able to negotiate agreements without being blocked by India or South Africa. We have to end the WTO. We need binding dispute settlement back again. It won't be the same as it was, but there can be, rules must be enforced. We need a strong executive function. We wouldn't have a WTO if there was a Director General of the GATT named Arthur Dunkel didn't put something on the table to finish up. It's a realistic objective to have WTO reform. What's the default option? It's horrible. The U.S. doesn't step up. The Chinese don't step up. The middle countries aren't able to fill the gap. Everybody says, we'll just take care of ourselves. We can't have that. So the conclusion, for the benefit of the world economy, nations serving their deemed economic security interests must have a broader view of what their interests are, to the extent possible, to have an open, rules-based trading system. The demands of economic efficiency, I believe, will ultimately be reasserted. Every corporation is working on that, and to the not to the exclusion, but as a priority. You have to, first of all, be able to be efficient. You just can't be resilient. So there'll be moderation of efficiency as a goal by considerations of welfare and sustainability. But can we make a better world? Yes, absolutely. Thank you.